Yes, welcome back. I've just cleaned the lens of this camcorder. Let's record some more video about Japan. I like to travel to Japan in the future, like Tokyo, but that's very far away and I need some more money. Just made a more video about seaplanes, but I do that in Danish, my language. I try to make some video about seaplanes, flying boats. It was supposed I should do it in English too. Just finish uploading. And it's very hot, 30 degrees in my living room again, or 30 or 31. Need to close my door. So I'd like to read more about Japan, but this camcorder needs 24 hours to charging. So I have to use this small old pockets. I have to use this because it's not enough. 2 hours every day is not enough. All the video because there's so much I have to read. No, it's not enough. I can record like 2 hours every day, 2 or 3 hours. But that's not enough because I need 1,000 hours. I need to read like 1,000 hours. So my computer have crashed 2 times today. Yes, I need that piece of paper. I need a note, and I need a minute to go to my bed. But maybe I'm getting some visits. I'm getting some visit soon, so I have to stop. If somebody knocking on my door, I have to stop the video. So maybe I get some visits soon in like 1 hour. But this is not so long.
Pilot training in the Imperial Japanese Navy. Pilot training in the Imperial Japanese Navy, IJN, had several programs, which expanded, evolved and changed throughout the years. The aim of these programs was to train aircrew for the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service, IJNAS. Initially, the pilot training program was open only to officers who graduated from the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy. However, the training was extended to include non-commissioned officers, NCO, in March 1914 and eventually also to enlisted Navy personnel in May 1920. Over the years, the number of NCO and enlisted pilots significantly surpassed the number of commissioned officer pilots, and officers would typically only command units, as Bunteich or Haikteich, and lead formations in combat. 1. As the Pacific War progressed and attrition impacted the units, it was not uncommon for NCOs to lead battle formations. Due to the lack of officers, and some units even ended up without officers, as in the case of 204th Air Group in summer 1943 after Operation SE.2. Prior to the Pacific War, the training programs were extremely selective and competitive, and produced only a small number of elite pilots every year. However, during the Pacific War, a rapid increase in the demand for replacement pilots significantly reduced the selectiveness and training time. 3. Officer pilot training programs. Officer pilot candidates were selected among the graduates of the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy. Kasumagura Airfield was one of the main training centers for Navy pilots. Graduates of the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy would first serve as midshipmen for a year before being commissioned ensigns. Newly commissioned ensigns were selected for pilot training based on the results of an aptitude test, Tekizaikansa, that typically lasted 3 weeks and took place at Kasumagura Airfield. After the officers were selected for flight training, they would first receive 1 month of training in a 2-seater aircraft with an instructor. Normally the first solo flight would be flown after 12 to 13 logged hours of dual flight time. After passing the solo flight, they would proceed with more advanced flight training for the next several months. The whole course took about 9 months, and after its completion, the graduates were assigned to a specific aircraft role: fighters, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, land-based bombers or seaplanes, and were sent to various air groups for specialized type training. By the time an officer pilot was posted to his combat unit, he would be a lieutenant, junior grade. 1, 3, 4. In November 1934, the Air Reserve Student Kyobigakasya program was created, which enabled male civilian university and college graduates to enter pilot training. The candidates had to be under the age of 26 in the case of a university degree and under the age of 24 in the case of a college degree. After successful completion of the training, the candidates were commissioned as ensigns. 1, 2. However, the officers from this program were distinguished from the academy graduates by their titles. Academy graduates were called officers, SHK, while university and college graduates were called reserve officers. Yobi SHK. 1, 5, 6. The reserve student program remained very limited for many years, with the first class comprising only 5 students and the 8th class in 1941 only 48 students. The program was only significantly expanded after the war situation grew worse for Japan in 1943. 1, 2. To distinguish officer pilot trainees from NCO and enlisted trainees, they were called flight students, Haikakasya, as opposed to flight trainee, Haikrenshya, used for NCO and enlisted trainees. 1, 3. NCO and enlisted pilot training programs. Yokosuka K2Y, Type 3 primary trainer, was the standard primary trainer aircraft, which was a version of British Avro 504. Yokosuka K5Y, Type 93 intermediate trainer, was the standard intermediate trainer aircraft which was affectionately referred to as a K-Tombo, or a Dragonfly. Prior to June 1930, the NCO and enlisted pilot training program was called Flying Technique Trainee, Haikjutsuranshya program. After that date, the program was renamed to Pilot Trainee, SJ Renshya program, which was typically shortened to SREN, for practical use. The trainees were selected from the personnel already serving in the Navy based on a competitive written exam and then further through rigorous physical and flight aptitude tests. The flight training took place at Kasumagura Airfield. Same as the officer pilot students, NCO/enlisted pilot trainees were normally allowed to go for first solo after 1 month of flight training with an instructor. 1, 2, 3, 7. In 1928, a new parallel program was created to enable also civilian population to enter the training directly, which was called Flight Reserve Trainee Program, High-Kyoka Program or Yokaran, for short. The first class began the training in June 1930. Yokaran program drew from the civilians aged from 15 to 17 and made the selection through a competitive written exam. Selected candidates then went through 3-year training that involved basic education and learning of various naval skills. Due to the increased demand for pilots, their training duration was afterwards shortened to 2.5 years during the Second Sino-Japanese War and to 2 years during the Pacific War. On the other hand, since SREN program candidates were older and already received basic education in the Navy through Kyodan Units 8, the program progressed quickly to the actual flight training, thus lasting only about a year in total. 1, 2, 3 major changes to the NCO and enlisted programs were made in May 1937. A new program aimed at civilians between age 16 to 19 was added and named A-Class Flight Reserve Trainee, High-Kyoka program. Due to the higher education level of candidates at the entry into the program, the training only lasted 1.5 years in total, later shortened to 1 year. To follow suit, the original Yokaran program was renamed to B-Class Flight Reserve Trainee, Opsu High-Kyoka program, where B-Class indicated the lower age of candidates at the entry compared to A-Class. In October 1940, SREN was also renamed to C-Class Flight Reserve Trainee, here High-Kyoka to fit into the same system. 1, 3. The flight training part of the programs was called Flight Trainee, High-Krenchsia, or Hiram, for short, and lasted for about 7 months, 2 months in a primary trainer aircraft, typically Yokosuka K2Y, and 5 months in an intermediate trainer aircraft, typically Yokosuka K5Y. After the introduction of classes, the flight training was standardized for all classes, same as the officer pilot students. The NCO and enlisted pilot trainees were at the end of the course sent to various air groups to specialize in a specific role: fighter, dive bomber, torpedo bomber, land-based bomber or seaplane. 1, 2, 3. Their specialization was called extended education, Inchikaiku, and took from 5 to 6 months depending on the role. 1. Carrier Operation Training Program. Pilots obtained the carrier qualification with one of the carriers, Akijai pictured. Pilots assigned to aircraft carrier squadrons underwent an intense training program to master carrier landing technique and obtained the carrier qualification. Prior to the Second Sino-Japanese War, only veteran pilots with 500 hours or more flight time were assigned to a carrier duty. However, in 1938 this was relaxed in order to follow the increased demand for carrier-qualified pilots, and thus even pilots fresh from the extended education program were assigned directly to a carrier duty. The training program started on a land airfield within a restricted area marked by white canvas markers that represented a carrier flight deck and took about 1 to 2 months. The next stage was mastering the approach on an actual carrier at sea, where the pilots would perform go-around without touching the flight deck. When the approach was mastered, the pilots were permitted to do touch and goes. Finally, the last step was training an actual carrier landing using arresting gear. 1, 4. See also Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service. Ranks of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Recruitment in the Imperial Japanese Navy. Kyodan. References.
Good. Let's stop the video, and I'd like to look for some links